This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, June 13th, 2024, and I've got little awesome Anshel Sag here, analyst extraordinaire, who's going to talk to us about Apple, because Apple did a thing last week, right? Hi, Anshel. How are you?
Hi, I'm pretty good. Apple did a lot of things earlier this week, but they did one thing especially.
What do you think is the big thing? Let me guess. It starts with A and it ends with I?
Yes, and it's a rebrand.
No, I love the rebrand. I think this is very Apple. They do not want to be associated with the mess, honestly, that is AI. I mean, you and I get it. We know what's going on, but the average person doesn't. And a lot of people are either like, I don't want to hear about it, it's wrong, or I'm confused about it, it's wrong. That's generally the sentiment, right? Yeah. So Apple Intelligence, very cool marketing. What are your thoughts on what they brought to the table? We're going to go through some of the features that they announced briefly, rapid fire. You guys can read the news, folks. Like, it's not that complicated. But I wanted to pick, Anshel's brain because, we have seen so much stuff in the last few weeks, right? Like, you were at Computex. I covered the Copilot Plus PCs. I covered the Snapdragon X stuff. Really awesome. There's rumors of MediaTek doing something. We'll talk about that. But it's like AI, even if you take, the bad parts out and you stop laughing at AI pin in R1, which you all did, there is some really interesting stuff going on. And I think what Apple's bringing, to me, what really stands out is a lot of edge AI and a lot of really, really controlled, it seemed, in the cloud AI, super guardrailed. And I could be wrong, but that's the impression we got, right?
Well, I think they want to control the cost of deploying that edge AI at the very edge of the network, and I think they want to control what that software experience is like, what the security profile is like, and I think that's why they're being very careful with that. But I would say this approach feels very on-device centric.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
they don't really want to go to the cloud if they don't have to, and I think that's a reasonable approach, especially for somebody like Apple. But I would also say that it seems like, from what I saw, and I already wrote an article about my thoughts on Forbes, I published this morning, but I think the big thing is that they want to hit all of the low-hanging fruit, right? It's like image generation, memojis, and this now they're whatchamacallit, genmojis or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And then you've got, image touch-up stuff.
Yeah.
You've got all the
stuff
things
we've already had on Google and
exactly.
Samsung, right? And
stuff we've all
Apple
seen.
and Xiaomi, for those of you following abroad.
But I would say that it's like a simplification of it. It's really easy to use versions of those tools, and it's not kind of all over the place. It's kind of centralized and tightened up and buttoned up, and I think that's what makes it more accessible. It's also free, so you don't have to pay for something like Midjourney. You don't have to pay for something like
and it's
Grammarly.
safe, right? It's not taking your data. No matter what, that those free features are staying with Apple, whether it's on your device or on the edge of the network in the cloud. And the other thing that I think is exciting here to me is it's like they brought these features to parity with Google and Samsung, which obviously are the big players in this market, North America and Europe, the West. And it's, things like summarizing an article, things like that. They've also done things like, do they have live translate yet? No, they don't have anything like that, but it's coming, right?
That's inevitable.
Yeah. And so the point is, in that sense, I like the fact that they've shown that they're competitive, right? They have some AI stuff and it's solid. And more importantly, it's very Apple, it's very private and what. So I'm very excited about that. But I'm more excited about things like the ChatGPT partnership, where they ask permission to go to ChatGPT every time Siri, for example, Siri was low-hanging fruit. It still sucks today. Hopefully this really helps it. And more importantly, most of it can be on your device or in Apple systems with your privacy in mind. And then every now and then it will ask and you can say yes or no. I hope there's a blanket way to say no for those people who are super paranoid. That would be really great. And then you don't have to pay for it. So you get ChatGPT, right, without having to get a subscription, which I think is a big deal.
And Apple's not paying for it either. Apparently, some details came out in Bloomberg today.
Wow.
That there's some kind of agreement in place that by ChatGPT getting access to Apple users, they are, waiving the costs associated with running that. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself long term. But it definitely sounds like if you're using ChatGPT, you are most likely the product.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Apple had the power to dictate that to OpenAI, and I think Sam Altman is smart enough to realize that's a good deal for him, because hopefully it opens up. Well, first of all, it's more data, right? More testing, more in the field use in large quantities, right? Apple users, if they say yes to using ChatGPT when prompted by Siri, there's probably a lot more users than the ChatGPT use there is today. Would you agree to that? I got a feeling that us tech folks, my audience, we use ChatGPT. We're aware of what it does and exists. We go out to the web and use it. We have the app maybe on our phone. I don't, but some people do. Right? But the point is, that's still a very small subset of the population out there. Once Apple does a feature, we all know the numbers scale to like some incredible amount. Like, I'm not convinced that Samsung's AI features we saw in January and that Google's AI features that we've had for quite a while are seeing any kind of numbers remotely to what Apple will see,
Yeah, I would say that's why I think OpenAI wanted access, right? That's what they're paying for is access.
So my feeling here is Apple totally nailed it. Like I'm not saying like they are the best at AI, because I don't think they are. And the proof is in the pudding. We need to try all this out when iOS 18 and all the other OSs come out. And I will definitely try it out. I've got a Mac with an M chip. I've got a 15 Pro Max here. I'll be able to play with the stuff.
Same.
I think it'll be solid. Tim Cook's been interviewed quite a bit since Monday with, lots of talk about, how he thinks there's going to be very minimal hallucinations. He didn't say none. And that's positive, I think. So I feel like messaging-wise, they totally won, because they're not mentioned. They talk about machine learning, about neural networks and NPUs, but they didn't talk about AI in the sense as everybody else is talking about it. They talk at Apple Intelligence. That's the messaging, again, marketing brilliance, such a simple thing. Plus, it really worked well with the word Apple, right? But I think also the features they went with are just what you need. And it gets people's feet wet in a safe way, which hopefully sets an example for the rest of the industry. Because if this goes well and we see huge adoption on these features, right, now all of a sudden Samsung and Google are going to be like, we have to do this, and our users are not going to tolerate hallucinations and privacy and security problems. I mean, that's arguable with Google, and who knows about Samsung, right? But I'm hoping it sets an example in that sense. I'm for the first time, I was bummed when I talked to Andrew last week, because we kind of estimated what would be happening. And I was like, oh, no hardware. I'm kind of looking forward to a Mac Mini M4, because there's no M4 Max yet. And that's an old Mac that hasn't been updated, or a Mac Studio M4. And he's like, you know what? Just, I think he knew stuff, because, he's pretty tight with Apple. And he's like, just hang tight. It's going to be good. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then now I'm like, wow, I've never been this excited about Apple doing something. And yet I'm not an AI, stan. I'm not huge on AI. I believe in it. I think it's important. I think we need to work on it. I think it's got a lot of, growing pains, and that's kind of to be expected. But I'm super stoked about this stuff. I think when I use my Pixel and I get the choice between Magic Eraser, which is crap, and I have a choice between the AI one is better, but it's still not great. And now I know that I've given my data in massively crazy way to Google, and then with Samsung you get that stupid watermark, which is fine. I get why this is a very controversial thing. Should we watermark? Should we add metadata to, AI images that have been edited or generated. Generated, I think we should. Edited, I think it really depends on the context. That's my opinion. Some people saying, look, as soon as it's AI, it should be meta tagged. And I'm like, no, because look, even just taking a photo with your camera without processing it, just raw, you're filtering. You're not getting reality. You're getting whatever the color signs, all these other things. So I think, like, has Apple actually talked at all about metadata on these? No. Do you think that they're following that, whatever it's called, that consortium that's
the open.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. The one that like Adobe and
yeah. There's a bunch of Sony even
I think
has
Google. I think Google's involved too.
Yeah, actually. I mean, everybody's on the bandwagon, but will they actually do it? Who knows? And Adobe will for sure. And then, of course, Meta now, right? Meta does tag photos that have that metadata in Instagram, right? I think. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, as a photographer, I agree with you. I think, everything that comes out of a smartphone nowadays is, AI enhanced in one way or another.
Oh, for sure.
I think that if things are retouched with AI, there should be some metadata added to it to communicate that something has been changed about the image. I also think it would be nice if all images that are taken have that content initiative metadata in there to tell you when the original was created, and if it's been tampered with. Maybe that's the better approach than whether or not you add more to it later on. But yeah, I think generated images definitely need to have some noticeable marking that it's not real.
But do you feel that Apple nailed it, like, for first try? And do you feel that not just messaging, that's obvious that they nailed it there, but do you think in terms of technology package, like what they delivered, like, I feel like we couldn't really have asked for more, right? Like, this is fine.
I think they did a pretty good job. I would say the lack of the real-time translate is kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else has that. And I found myself wanting and using it while I was in Taiwan. So, like, yeah, it's actually a pretty useful tool, but it's mostly for when you're traveling. That said, I think the best tools that they did have were all of the writing stuff, the writing assistants, and being able to just, I know people are going to use Genmoji. I'm not going to, but I know people are going to.
I think the young folks will love it. Look, I even want, like, here's my problem with Memmoji and these things, is that I'm not super creative. I didn't really want to create a character that was like, I picked the skirt with the mohawk for me and whatever, and the piercing. I've done it. My icon that you see in all my social media. I did that in 1995, okay? Like, there was this little online site, and it generated 128 by 128 images. The one I'm currently using is a 512 by 512 that I use Photoshop to scale and clean up pixel by pixel.
You vectorized it
to make it look nice, right? I'm done with that. What I would love to do is type literally like what I saw when I was at the MediaTek booth at MWC with Brad, right? Where on device, changing. Like, I could type in, like, and it would change in real time. That, I would love that, because I want to create an emoji for myself from my Apple device. It'd be fun, but I want to just be able to type something wonky and delicious that hopefully, involves unicorns and rainbows and looks like me, right? Like, so that's kind of where I'm going to go with it. And I think that's much more fun, because people are going to be able to experience what I know. It was very delightful when I experienced it at MWC. It's silly, but it was delightful. And I think that I can see young people really iterating and coming up with, like, hey, I use this search term, check out what I got, right? And of course, it's not going to replicate the same thing every time, which is the best part about AI, is that there is, like, variance, right? So I think this is going to be cool. I don't want to dismiss. I kind of dismiss Memoji a little bit, but I think Genmoji or whatever it's called, I think it's going to be more fun. I think it's going to open it up to more people.
The one thing I will say is I really feel like they missed on making Siri better, in the sense that, like, they could have told us that it's now faster, it's now more accurate. They didn't do any of that.
I think they're setting expectations, right? Because I think here's the thing. I saw the Marquez interview with Tim Cook, and you should watch it, folks. It's very short. It's 15 minutes. And he asked, like, he basically said, here are 5 products. What are your thoughts, right? Apple products. And one of them was Magic Mouse. And we all know. Look,
I saw that.
I use the Magic Mouse. I mean, for the audience, let me explain. I use the Magic Mouse. I personally have no problems with it. I love the ergonomics. I love the fact that it has a touchpad on top of it for scrolling, especially in Audacity, my main audio editor that I use for the podcast. I scroll left and right all the time. I don't want to. I need a proper, I need a trackpad basically. And so have the mouse is essentially has a little trackpad on it for scrolling. Great. I love it. I don't mind. We all know it's not the best design. A lot of people have issues with the ergonomics and the pain of their wrists. We also know that we all agree that the stupid charging on the bottom, the connector, it is not one of Apple's best products by far. It is a solid product if you're used to it like me. I've used it for years. But every time I have to plug it in and pull out another mouse to continue working or pull out my Apple trackpad, which is what I do, it's like, what the F, right? So the point is, Siri has, amongst us users, that reputation. It sucks. Let's be real. And so I think Apple is smart here. They're never going to admit it sucks. But by not setting expectation, by not saying it's faster, it's more accurate, it works better, they're going to set us up for delight. Hopefully, we're coming into this and we're going to be like, oh, look at that. It did that better, right? Like I've been talking to Google a lot lately, just for fun, just to see. I don't have any of the AI stuff turned on yet. I'm just on the good old assistant. And I'm talking to my Google Home, And I've noticed that it still does some stuff really well that nobody else does. I'm like, wow, okay, that's pretty good. It's pretty contextual. And it has, very limited AI. I don't think it has anything in terms of like the modern AI that we talk about now. So if Siri can get at least past or beyond that, great. And then Google hopefully will add that with Gemini or whatever, right? If it talked about adding Gemini smarts to the assistant, because the assistant seems to have been basically like ignored for a while now.
So if you use Gemini like on the Samsung, it actually has you replace Assistant with Gemini.
Yeah, I've had that option on my Pixel. I'm a little scared to do it because I'm like, how will it change my interactions with my phone? I think what I'm going to try to do it, I'm going to try it on my Pixel 8a. I've got a review in it and see. Turn it on that, but not on my regular Pixel, my daily one, because I just want to see how it works before I try it for sure. What's been your experience with that?
It's been okay. I don't think it's really been that much better.
Does it feel different at all? No?
It feels slower, to be honest with you.
Oh.
But I also think that most of my Google Assistant usage is actually with the speakers in my home.
Right. So it doesn't work with the speaker, right?
Yeah. So like, when I ask the speakers to light up, my phone also lights up, but the speakers are usually the ones that respond. So I don't really have a good metric, whether or not that's actually working for me.
I have a funny little anecdote to share with the audience here. My spouse and I like to call each other boo a lot. And if you say the call word okay, followed by, boo. I'm doing it slowly so my Google Homes don't go up. My Google Home goes off almost every time because it thinks I'm saying, you know what. And it's like really funny because we're having really good time with it now. We're like half the time, we're talking to each other, having a conversation in the kitchen, and Google comes in and says, hey, what can I do for you? And we're like, oh, Google, you're part of our fun conversation. You're so smart. Yeah, it's just funny because I didn't really think you would pick up on that. It's been a lot lately for some reason.
I think the false positives have actually gotten worse for Google Assistant.
It's the other thing I've noticed too is like there was a time when dictating on Google was really solid, and now it's just not quite as solid, and I'm kind of wondering why. But anyway, it's I know it depends a lot on what the microphones are picking up. If you're on earbuds, no matter how good your earbuds are, it's going to be worse.
I had a huge improvement from the S23 Ultra to the S24 Ultra, like day and night.
Do you think it's just microphones?
I think it's better optimized on the S24 now. I haven't used it on the Pixel 8 Pro in a long time because it's not my daily device, but I will say it is massively improved on the S24 Ultra compared to 23. So I'm happy with the experience.
So folks, I will have a link to The Verge's recap of Worldwide Developer Conference. 13 biggest announcements that I think are going to give you the lowdown if you want to know more what happened. There's also a link I'm putting in the show notes about Apple Intelligence, also a summary from The Verge. The Verge is really good at this stuff. And I'll add Anshell's story on Forbes. And I want to talk briefly about a couple of features that I think are pretty cool. because there's a lot of, we didn't get hardware, we got lots of Apple intelligence, but we didn't get
you got limitations on hardware in terms of what can run it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that real quick. So I think it's interesting that they said any iPad and Mac with M chips, because to me, I really thought like on Macs, I'm not surprised, because you can fall back on the GPUs and the CPUs. You get enough headroom. So at the same time, on the iPads, I thought they were going to say M4 only. Like I thought it was going to be only the latest one. And then no, it's all the M1s. And then on iPhone, strangely, it's only 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max, which makes sense because they have different chips than 15. But wow, what do you think of that? Like, are they just making sure that it's a good experience, do you think, at this point?
I have a feeling it comes down to memory bandwidth,
okay,
and NPU tops. And I think that if you look at the A17, it's just a much beefier SoC than previous generations, and it's got better AI performance. So I think that they're also trying to push people in the direction of newer devices. So, how does Apple pay for all of this amazing new software? By getting people to buy
Apple's MO has always been to sell more iPhones, and the iPhone sales have slowed down a little bit. I think what we're going to see is if iPhone 16, this is my bet. Now that this last year was the first time they did two separate, like they reused an older chipset for the 15 and then a new chipset for the 15 Pro. I think we're going to see the same. I think we're going to see the 16 coming out with the chip from the 15 Pro, and then we're going to see a brand new chip. Do you think they'll ever call those chips M on the iPhones?
No, I think they'll stay with A.
Okay.
A for phones and M for everything else.
I'm surprised they didn't do one. Well, I guess it makes sense. They consider the iPad a computer. So yeah, it makes sense that it would be the same naming as the Mac. All right. So the two things that came out of that, they spent literally 2 seconds on this one, but I'm excited about it. RCS support and iOS 18. So why are you laughing? Because I want to hear your thoughts.
I'm laughing because it did really spend 2 seconds and I actually missed it. I was watching, as were other people.
But you got distracted by something for 2 seconds.
We all missed it. Yeah, I mean...
I only know because I actually didn't watch the keynote at all. I did. I had so much to do that day. I was like, you know what? I'm going to let myself get delighted and see what happens later. So I don't know. I don't know how long it took. 2 seconds is what I've been told, though. Literally 2 seconds.
2 seconds, that might even be too generous.
Wow.
But I will say, still get green bubbles, so the stigma will still be there. But at least
not surprising, because I think they've made that very clear.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, the stigma, I think the media has calmed down about the stigma. I think the media was kind of amplifying it for a while. And I'm talking about us tech media. We were a little like, I do agree that it shouldn't be like that. I think that's causing a lot of problems and bullying and stuff, and forcing people to buy iPhones. As Tim Cook said, buy your mom an iPhone. But God, the man is never going to outlive that quote. But I think that with the fact that we're getting high-res photos, high-res video, we're going to be getting, all the goodness, this person is typing, the reaction stuff that we want. I think all that is paying off. But here's my question to you. Right now, RCS was initially kind of supported by the carriers, and then Google kind of took it over, right? Google has their own RCS servers now that do pretty much all the heavy lifting for RCS on Android through the Messages app from Google. You get RCS on Samsung's app too, right? Right now. I think there's a few, because for a while it was you had to install the Google Messages app to get RCS.
It's default on Samsung.
Okay, so it's defaulting to the Google one. They don't have their own messaging app anymore, because they used to, remember?
Yes, thank God.
Because you're more of a Samsung user than I am. Okay, so because I don't really use my S24 Ultra for messaging. I just use it for photos and stuff. So, okay, so my question is, are they going to use Google's RCS servers, or are they going to spin off their own? Because are you going to rely on the carriers? Because if they do that, we're screwed.
I know they're using the universal profile, but I don't know who's going to host it.
And yeah, do you think they'll partner with Google on that, just for expediency?
I think that's the route to fastest deployment, and they already have enough of a relationship with Google that this wouldn't really be that much of a stretch.
No. Well, let's see how it goes because this is one of those things that they spend 2 seconds on that I'm really hoping is not another one of those. We're doing this because of the EU, whatever it might be. I know it wasn't the EU, it's probably China. But my point is, because in China, there's a ton of Android phones. That's the reality. And they all have the same problem right now. You can't send high-res photos. You can't send high-res video. It's a real mess. It's a hassle. It's terrible. Bah. Anyway, the other one that I thought was really cool, and I haven't really spent enough time researching it, but I think I wanted to hear your thoughts, is this crazy calculator app for iPadOS 18. I'm super stoked about this as a math nerd. I mean, I have a math degree. A lot of people think I actually have an engineering degree, but I have a math degree.
But it doesn't do calculus.
I don't know. It looks like a lot of the things I saw where you could draw on the pen and it doesn't do calculus?
No, someone tried to do some derivatives on it and it wouldn't do it.
So you still need an HP calculator. Sorry, some of you are Texas Instrument people, and I'm totally okay with that. Like I'm
a TI 84 guy.
I'm an HP person, but I love my TIs as well. Okay, let's be calculator nerds for a second.
I have a TI 84 titanium.
I have a 48 HP 48. It's like 20 years old, and it still runs like a charm. Only because back when I was in engineering school and math school in the 90s, or it's more than 20 years old. It's like early 90s. So it's like 30 years old.
Mine's almost exactly 20 years old because that's when I was in high school.
Mine is 30 years old because I was in college in the early 90s. I'm very old. But the point is, my HP 48 SX or whatever it is, there's been new ones since, and HP's got a whole line since then. And Texas Instruments, back then compared to now, is a whole different world. But TI was doing some good stuff back then, but for some reason, most of my peers and my teachers and myself, we gravitated towards HP. Back then, in those days, the internet was nascent. There was no standardization around what calculator you used in high school or in college. Like that came later. And actually, in my high school, and we're talking late 80s here, Casio, like there was it was a Texas Instrument. There was TI 30, like just a basic scientific calculator was kind of like the recommended. It wasn't required, but I actually went from Texas Instruments to HP. I started off with like just dumb Texas Instrument calculators, like TI 30, LCD display, like basic. My first ever computer that I ever owned, before I owned any computer, counts as a computer today, probably less smart than the chip in your doorbell. And I'm talking about a dumb doorbell, not a connected doorbell with a camera, is the HP 57. That's the first one I had. It was a fluorescent display, rechargeable NiCad battery that lasted like half an hour. You could store. Oh,
yours didn't have the little solar panel on it?
Yes, and you could store 50 instructions for programming. It was one of the first affordable programmable calculators. Imagine writing code where you can only do 50, not commands, instructions to do something. That's how I learned to program. Then I went to a Casio QWERTY-based basic calculator. And then I went to the Commodore 64, the Sinclair ZX81, Sinclair. I was in Europe, so a lot of Sinclairs, ZX Spectrum, etc. And then, of course, I eventually graduated to a Atari ST, and then from the Atari ST, I went to Windows. What was your history behind computers? What was your first technically a computer that you actually owned, didn't borrow from friends?
So my family shared a computer. I believe it was some IBM hand-me-down with MS-DOS on it.
Like a real IBM, not like a clone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, real IBM.
And so you're MS-DOS. See, I had MS-DOS in college, learned it there, but I was basic home computers for a long time.
And then I was a real big Windows 95 user.
Oh, yeah.
I played a lot of Duke Nukem, and I worshipped Encarta. And
oh my God, Encarta, I love it. CD-ROM, freaking awesome. I was big Windows 95 too. Windows 95 is what got me into modern computing. I was actually, before that, I used Windows for Workgroups 3.11, which was essentially most of 95, but kludged onto Windows 3.1. 3.1 wasn't really good. And 95 really solved a lot of problems that 3.1 had. But over time, They added all these like TCP/IP networking, like all these warts to Windows 3.1 and called it Windows for Workgroups 3.11. And I did that for years. And then I went to 95. And then from there, I went to NT. And then I went to 2000 and I went to, XP? And then from there on, after that, I switched to Mac because in 2004, I could finally afford a Mac. So in 2004, I went to a PowerPC, PowerBook 12-inch G4, and I've been a Mac person ever since. But I do have PCs around. I even have some Linux machines around. I have a museum. I don't know if people know this. I have a museum of old computers. They're mostly portables because I don't have a lot of space. I have one of the original iMacs, but my museum has mostly a lot of old Toshiba and Sony Vaios and things like that. All are running Linux. I put like little adapters, parallel ATA to compact flash, and I replaced all the hard drives with 4 gigabyte, CF cards and installed lightweight Linux on there. Nerdy.
I still have my OG Android device and one of my first Windows mobile devices.
Nice. Well, that tangent was fun. But the calculator app, we have a calculator app for the iPad. Like, this is a big deal. I'm excited about this.
We have, I forgot to mention, in addition to RCS, we also got satellite messaging.
Yeah, but didn't they already have that? No, that was just SOS, right? Like, now it's messaging. So, yeah,
hey,
okay.
Out in the Black Rock Desert.
It doesn't really matter there. I have a radio when I work there at Burning Man, so I just like.
But you can be out of the range of all connectivity.
No, our radios are like 30 miles, half duplex, Motorola, work radios, multiple channels, the whole shebang. We actually have to use the FCC approved like call signs and everything. For work, that's what it is. We do have text messaging because we have Wi-Fi as staff there, but it's Wi-Fi calling that gives us because the local cells are completely overwhelmed and nothing works. Anyway, let's talk about Rivian briefly because it's funny because Andrew was on last week and he had gone to the Rivian event. I found that out afterwards. If I had found out in advance, because we had 2 different waves. That's what they call them. Let me fill you in, audience, on car stuff. Events are a tech thing, like you go to a Samsung event. But a car is like you go to a Rivian program or Mercedes program. It's called a program. And a program is where they fly you somewhere and put you in a car and get you to try it out and do the dog and pony show and the briefings. And then there's waves because they have a limited number of cars. So they have basically a few people come for a few days and have more people come for another few days, etc. Right? Usually it's a day or 2 each. So I was on wave 1, he was on wave 2, so we didn't know. So at the end of the podcast, I'm like, so how was your week? He's like, I had a really good time with Rivian. I'm like, oh, damn it. We could have talked about Rivian on the podcast. So I'm like, I know who's into EVs. Anshel and I will talk about Rivian. Okay, R1T and R1S I got on a refresh. The gist of it is this. The originals were awesome, but they cost a really lot of money for Rivian to make. They were losing money, each of them. And it showed that they were capable of making something that could compete with Tesla, which I think is really great in a very different category of product, right? But there were a lot of things that could be streamlined. And so they did that. This is all about streamlining the experience for the users, the production for themselves, so that they can finally make a profit on these. And oh my God, did they do some cool stuff. And so the end result is that you're not going to pay less. In fact, I think the starting prices are $1,000 more across the board. And the quad motor models are really shooting up in price. But you get tons of goodies. And more importantly, they make a profit. They stay on track and survive until they can ship R2, which is going to be their mainstream product in 2026. So I'm a big fan. I mean, with Tesla being completely, in shambles because of Elon's BS, as a Tesla owner, my lease is ending. I'm not getting another Tesla because I can't do that. But at the same time, Rivian's kind of my hope, like Star Wars, a new hope. And so I went and drove the cars. I have a very good relationship with Rivian. They love me. So I was like, okay, let's try this out. And so here are the tech things you need to know. They went to a zonal architecture, which only Tesla is doing right now, which means that instead of having, domain-based computers. So like a computer for the seats, a computer for the doors, a computer for it's like they have a computer for the the center of the car, a computer for the left of the car, and a computer for the right of the car. And it does everything that needs to be handled in that zone. The other thing, and that's nothing new, but Tesla Model 3 was the first to do that. Like eventually it filtered down to X and S, which are older cars. And then of course, Y's doing it, Cybertruck's doing even more so. But they really invented this, and really it lets you own the hardware and the architecture and the software and integrate even more seamlessly, because they Rivian went from 17 to 7 ECUs, to give you an example. They reduced, wiring they removed 1.6 miles of wiring, which is 44 pounds by doing this, okay? Also, they don't have to deal with suppliers supplying them black boxes in terms of software. They can be fully software defined as a vehicle.
Sure.
They can really update all the microcontrollers, all the firmware across the board. Not that they couldn't before, because they've been very strong about owning their software from day one. But basically, they've cut up. Also, their battery pack is now structural. And instead of having these metallic modules that weigh a lot, they're plastic encased modules in a very large structural cast, piece. So it's much more efficient. The same cells as before, although the base battery now is a LFP battery, so lithium iron phosphate, which is much cheaper, can be charged to 100%, all that. So that's for the entry model battery, 270 mile range. What else has changed? Much faster computers, much better cameras, much higher resolution cameras all the way around. The sensor suite is essentially the same, but just much higher quality and much more compute. One of the things that Rivian wasn't very good at was like the autopilot equivalent, the level 2 assist stuff. I'm not talking about FSD because FSD is BS, but I'm just saying, it's not BS. I've tried it. It's really interesting. It's really good. I'm really impressed, but it's still not ready for prime time.
It's not commercial.
It's not commercial, but level 2 plus, which is kind of where I think things are good, is finally, I think Rivian is in a place where they can compete with this new technology. They're running NVIDIA chips. They've also streamlined their UI to be cel-shaded, which is really cool. They're using Unreal Engine. They did that before, but instead of realistic, renderings of the car in the display, they actually have these cel-shaded with like weird. They had to create all these weird shaders for it. It's really cool. Like as an ex-video game developer, I was like, wow, like this is very advanced stuff. The roof now can be turned opaque with like an LCD or whatever, like one of those, face changing things. That's a new thing. New wireless chargers that actually work, but the thing that is strange is they didn't put an AX connector. It's still CCS1, but they told me they're going to be able to switch at one point. They feel that right now it's still, the Rivian Adventure Network is mostly CCS1. They have the adapters. People, in fact, this weekend, folks, by the time you listen to this, I'll have an article on Tech Radar about my experience using R1S, the old one, on Tesla superchargers. And it's seamless and it's impressive and it's awesome. And I have to say right now, and I also have experience with Ford, I would say that if you're looking for an EV right now and you can't be in the Tesla world for obvious reasons, go look at Rivian if you can handle a vehicle that expensive and that big. Or go look at Ford. The Mach-E is a very, very strong candidate. You have one, right?
I got a Ford Mach-E. I do not have the latest update yet to do the seamless charging, but I still have a Tesla account and a credit card attached, so it won't be an issue for me.
So my point is that, with Rivian or Ford now, all the benefit, you'll see my article actually goes through everything that's similar and everything that's different. And right now I have to say Tesla still has a much more seamlessly integrated. Rivian is really close. They're just trailing. And then Ford is quite a bit less. Like, what works with Ford is if you plug in at a supercharger, if it's a version 3 supercharger, and you're just ready to go, it'll just work. You need the adapter and that's it. But the rest of it, like the in-system integration, the nav, finding the stations, all that's not streamlined enough yet. Rivian has that almost as good as Tesla now, which is really impressive. So that's not new. That's coming to all Rivians. But I just want to point out that in addition to really revamping the R1T and R1S, supercharging on Rivian is solid. So you can really road trip with that thing. And then the range up to 420 miles on the dual motor max pack, which is with the new refresh, is really impressive. And this is real 420 miles. This is not like, maybe.
Yes.
So there,
and
that's
didn't
basically
make any jokes about 420.
That's basically it. And so the quad motor, the 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. I tried it on a drag strip with tire blankets on the tires, stock tires, but Oh my God. Okay. So I've experienced up to about 3.0 to 0 to 60. I've never done plaid yet on Tesla, but I've got 3.6 on my car. So I'm used to that and that's fine. 3.0, I'm okay. 2.5, I thought I was going to throw up. Like there was roller coaster territory. My tummy was saying like, let off the gas. I can't handle this. It's like that crazy. So do you want that? Probably not. You're probably okay with just a dual motor performance, which does, only 2.9 to, whatever it is, 3 point something. I don't know. It's very fast. The point is, good kudos on Rivian. The other little things they've added is the light bar at the front now has segments in it. So it shows you the charging level in segments, which is really cool. Because in the past, it was just glowing green when I was charging. In the back, they did the same. They have the little segments underneath, and the little segments underneath can be activated. You know how sometimes you're on the freeway and you see like one of those maintenance trucks, and it has a little arrow that flashes, go left of me, go left of me, go right of me, go right, go both sides of me, go both sides of me. You can do that with the rear lights. There's a menu item in the screen. Cool. So you can be like in a place that's maybe not the best place to be and have cars go around you with the LED strip in the back. Very cool little things like that, But most importantly, they're going to make money on these cars. And as a user experience, are going to have a much more streamlined, it's much more future proof. You're going to get better ADAS. You're going to get better software updates, NVIDIA GPUs out the kazoo. There's going to probably be some AI features coming at some point. La, la, la. So I'm excited. I have to say, Rivian's done a very good job. I wish them well. I really want to see the R3X. That's why I'm going personally. Thoughts?
I actually think that it's good to see all these improvements. I paid attention to it. I did not attend the event, even though I would have loved to. I think for me, I also think they did some updates to I think Chromecast or something.
Yeah,
like
that. They have Chromecast in the cars. That's also on the old ones. That's an update that's coming across the board where you'll be able to cast stuff to the screen,
which is great.
Which is super cool.
I didn't love the experience on Tesla of trying to use YouTube and other apps on there.
Yeah,
I like the idea of letting users be in more control of their experience in the apps that they have. I did think the lack of an NACS plug was kind of silly, but I think what ultimately is good is that this sets a new bar for all of the future Rivian vehicles in terms of experience and software and capabilities. I personally am considering getting an R2 when that comes out. We currently have the Ford, but we might end up needing two cars, and if I end up getting an R2, heck, I might even get an R1S because I might want all of the nice high-end features. But we'll see what happens. It's an expensive car.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they start around 70, right? So if you want just the problem is that 270-mile range, I think you need at least 300 on a modern EV. So then you have to go to the mid-range pack, and then immediately it jumps to like $20,000 more. And you get more performance out of it, of course. But the base price is $69,900 on the R1T with the LFP pack and the dual motors. And then I think 1,000 or 2,000 more for the R1S, which isn't really that bad. But keep in mind, they're really large vehicles. Like I'm more of a small car person. And every time I get in a Rivian, I love it. I particularly love the truck. And I'm not a truck person. It's really weird. I really love the truck. But I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm literally have to climb into it. Even with the suspension set to low, I'm like, oh, I'm too old for this. And then also like, visibility is great because you're staying high, but you still have that hood kind of gets in the way. You might not be able to see children in front of you. It's still a big SUV truck vehicle. So it doesn't like every time I get in my Model 3 still today, since I have it for another month, like the visibility, the front, like the Mach-E is the same. You can see everything because everything is like sloping down, and it's really nice. I'm a big fan of visibility. Like I like to rely on the assistance system a lot, especially the cameras for backing up and stuff. But I want to have this really nice panoramic view, like Honda used to do back in the day when they had these really like low front, hoods and stuff. Anyway, let's move to some news. How do you feel about that?
Sure.
So there'll be a few phone news. I want to start with this one because it's kind of cool. The Lite Phone 3. So Lite Phone has it's funny, the Lite Phone 2 is still selling 5 years in and is still relatively popular according to Lite. And it's really dumb/non-smart, whatever you want to call, phone with an e-ink display. But now they've updated the Lite Phone 3 with a black and white, high quality, high resolution OLED. Only black and white. And with a 50 megapixel fixed focus, but extended depth of field. It's kind of like what Nokia used to do, where there's no autofocus, but it's designed to get an equal amount of focus from about a few inches all the way to infinity. And it does some software trickery to do that. But it looks really good. If you like, it's the reverse or shallow depth of field. Everything is infinity. And then they have even an 8 megapixel front camera. So now you can take video calls, you can take photos. You can't edit them, you can't upload them. You can just like take photos, and of course, no autofocus means that you're not going to get that artistic stuff you get on a real phone. But apparently that was a feature that was asked for by their users. And also they're adding NFC for payments. That's another feature that's asked by the users. Whether it's implemented, I don't know. There's a bunch of interesting little things there. But the question is for me is, like, where do you draw the line between like this light, minimal, like weekend only, maybe, or maybe daily, phone that does just texting, messaging, and phone calls, and now photos, and a real smartphone. Like they're looking at adding Lyft and Uber. They're looking at adding maps. Like I can understand that there are some core things you want to do with a phone, and maybe that's what's preventing a lot of us from using a light or dumb phone during the week, right? Because we need to actually take an Uber and we need to look at Google Maps or whatever. We listen to our music. So they've added music playback support too, like beyond the local music, like using streaming. So it's interesting to me. What are your thoughts on these phones and where we're going with this?
I feel like it's moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I feel like if it starts to creep up on normal phone usage, then I don't really understand what it feels like. It's reducing its value prop by becoming more like a regular phone.
Yeah, why not take an old, even a old Android, slightly old, like a year old, 2-year-old Android phone, and cap it off by not putting the apps on and restricting access to stuff for yourself.
Yeah, I just think that I don't really know what their mantra is and what their design principles are, but I feel like they might be drifting away from them.
Yeah, this is weird. Like, I feel like they're, in listening to what their users want, they're kind of almost admitting that their product doesn't need to exist. Like, maybe there is a gray area here. I'm very big on gray areas. So there's probably a gray area here where people are going to say, but I do not want to be sucked into the App Store and apps. I just want to be limited with no way of getting out. But I do need Lyft, and I do need Uber, and I do need a calendar, and I do need Spotify, and I do need maps. I can see that. But if you're going to go there, buy an iPhone SE or Pixel 7a, Pixel 8a, right? And do your thing where you're just like, capping it so it doesn't do all that stuff. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so now the next stuff we have here, a bunch of phone stuff. So the first ones you should know is two phones were launched this week. Honor 200 series, which was actually technically launched late May, is now available globally. And then we have a HTC U24 Pro in Taiwan. Those are the new phones of the week. I will give you a quick rundown on these. The Honor 200, it's kind of the mid-range from Honor. And it's got a Pro version, a regular version. These phones are weird because they're very nice, but they always feel very plasticky. So I'm wondering if they went to metal frames this year because they're pretty pricey usually. And, you're almost getting a flagship with less more mid-range specs. And I'm always wondering, like, why don't you make it really nice if it's going to cost that much? So we're talking a Snapdragon 7 Gen 3 on the 200, So, as you can see, it's not like a flagship.
But they do move a lot of volume with these, don't they?
I guess they do, but where? Like, even in Europe, I don't think they're that popular. Maybe China. So, see, even the Pro has a Snapdragon 8S Gen 3. So, it's like they're pretty high end, and they cost, for Chinese phone, they're not cheap. 50 megapixel portrait camera is a big deal, is what they're talking about a lot here, and yeah, I mean, they're nice phones. I don't doubt it, but I'm trying to figure out where they place in the phone world.
Yeah.
Selfie
It's
camera.
a weird spot.
Selfie camera at 50 megapixels is kind of their thing here, and I get that. Yeah, so look at the prices, like 799 euros for the Pro. Like that's like you might as well buy like a flagship.
Yeah.
I never understood that. And then it probably has a plastic frame, which is like, what?
But it might be that the price we're seeing isn't the price that's selling for in China.
True. It's true. China is cheaper, but this is the global model, so I'm just going by the global prices. It does have, large battery, 100-watt charging, 66 wireless, which is the first time I think we've seen wireless charging on the numbered series honors. But yeah, okay, that's basically it. Then we've got, so I'm kind of excited about this one because look, HTC did some weird crypto phones for a while, and we're all like shaking our heads and like rolling our eyes. And now, last couple of years, they've been doing these mid-range phones that aren't too sucky, that are only in Taiwan, that are probably made by some Shenzhen ODM, right? But this thing doesn't look too bad. Like, it's got triple 50 megapixel cameras. It has a metal frame, a nice OLED display. It's IP67 and Snapdragon 7 Gen 3, again, very mid-range. But it does look pretty solid. So, like 15-watt wireless charging. This is another thing you don't see too much on, essentially a Chinese phone. I know Taiwan is a different country, but I'm just saying like it's probably made by Shenzhen company of some kind, right? So HTC is making phones again, and they don't seem to suck. Will we see them in the
maybe they're filling their factories with these phones because they're not really selling that many headsets anymore.
Yeah, it could be possible. Yeah, I'm just interested. It's just nice to know that they still make phones, and apparently they don't suck. I mean, spec wise, they look solid, and I've heard a few reports now from people who've tried them out.
I mean, they were one of the OG smartphone brands.
I know, and that's why I'm kind of like, oh, this is nice. Yeah, I'll leave some links from GSM Arena, who always keeps track of everything for us. CMF Phone 1 from nothing. So this is a big deal because that phone has been, last week we talked about a rumor on this phone. Now we have a leak, and I want your thoughts on this, on this design, because there is some kind of weird scroll wheel on the back of the phone, and also like a weird screw hole for attaching accessories, which, that I don't care about. I think it's cool. We've seen accessory attachments before. But what could this scroll wheel be for? Do you think that's a volume rocker essentially? Like, that is cool. That kind of reminds me of, since it's nothing and Teenage Engineering works with nothing, it kind of reminds me of Rabbit R1 with the scroll wheel. Like, and the color too. Like, I'm actually very excited about Nothing making a $200 phone for India only under its CMF brand. Are you?
I think it's an interesting looking device, but I'm not really sure I will be that excited to use one. I think novel design is interesting. I
have a thing for cheap phones, and the design is interesting, and I'm kind of curious what the scroll wheel does. And also, by the way, the specs leaked last week. This has a 6.8-inch, 120 hertz OLED for $200. And I think it's going to have some sort of MediaTek 5G chip or something. So it's not like...
I think it's a Dimensity 7300.
Yeah. It's not like rock bottom. Like, it's for $200. Yeah. We're talking like... We're very close to Nothing Phone 2A here, yet we're getting, another price, another $100 basically. Of course, this is India, where it's fierce over there in terms of competition. I just really hope, and Jane, if you're listening, I really hope we can get review units here in the West, because I know that a lot of CMF stuff I haven't been able to get my hands on, and I have a feeling that this would be a very interesting one to start with. So hear me out. Send me a review unit. I'm really excited. More importantly, we have some more Samsung rumors and a Samsung device. This has got me a little annoyed, because I was annoyed last week when we found out that the Z Fold 6 and Z Flip 6 would be pretty much identical to last year's, with, of course, chip bump. But camera-wise, it seems like they're not. It seems like, once again, Samsung is probably putting all their effort into the Ring, which I get, but like they're really neglecting their folding phones, and they're the master of folding phones. They're really the OG. And when we saw what OnePlus, Oppo, whatever you want to call them, did with the Open N3 last year, you're like, hello, Samsung, wake up. And now we're finding out they're going to be more expensive. On top of that, you're basically paying more for last year's phones, slight improvements in design for sure, the more rectangular shape of the Fold. But same camera systems? Are you kidding me? Like, what is this, 2021? What's your take as an analyst on, is Samsung screwing up here?
I think they don't feel threatened in the markets where they're doing good volume.
Or they do, but it was too late. This was already in the works.
I don't know. I feel like they could have pivoted. They have the resources to make changes. It's a big ship, but I also think that smartphone design is fairly agile now, and I think that they have control of their manufacturing to a degree where they could make changes if they needed to.
Right.
I think they're probably more focused on AI than they are on physical design, and because of that, the physical design is going to suffer.
Yeah.
And they will probably get leapfrogged by someone like an Oppo or a Vivo.
I mean, already the Xiaomi folding phone, the Vivo folding phone, and of course the Oppo and OnePlus, which are now almost a year old, are clearly superior, even though the chipsets aren't as new, maybe. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I know they're going to have watches and new tablets, and they're going to have like the Ring. The Ring, I'm really excited about the Ring, because I think that's a really solid new category to get into. Yeah. Which one are you wearing?
Aura,
yeah. Some people are wearing I don't know the other one. I can't remember the brand. Yeah, I'm looking, because I think with Samsung making a Ring, they're not going to screw that up. And it's going to probably become another one of those standard accessories that some people choose. And as such, with much better, marketing than Aura can ever imagine. So I think Apple will get in the game eventually too, because of Samsung getting in the game. So I'm actually very excited about the Ring. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm a little bummed by these slow leaks and rumors about the folding phones, because I was hoping that, look, I didn't think they were going to change their form factor that much. Like, I'm not too worried about the design being similar, but I was hoping that we would get a camera spec bump, especially because the cameras on these other folding phones have really cranks them up quite a notch.
Definitely.
Right? Like, you can't throw all the AI, you can throw all the ISP you want at these old sensors. It's just not going to be the same. Things have really changed a lot in the last 2 years in terms of sensor and lens and performance on any phone. So I'm a little bummed by that. But at the same time, today is Thursday. Today they launched a Watch FE for $200. That's way too expensive, number one. Number two, it's essentially a Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 from before. And as an LTE version, like, why are they launching this now when they're going to be in 2 weeks or whatever it is, launching a Watch 7 and a Watch 7 Ultra? We know that. And the Watch 7 Ultra looks really cool with this kind of squared round squircle thing. And, I like the idea that Samsung's getting their own design language on a watch, kind of like the Ultra from Apple that really stands out. Everybody knows it's an Ultra. Like, what do you think's going on here as an analyst? Like, why do this product? Like, does it even need to exist?
I think that they're trying to create a stack of watch offerings that satisfy different price rungs. And that's the only reason why I can think that they would offer the FE. And I think the FE's price is fungible. They're probably going to offer some kind of bundle discounts, totally. And that's why it's priced the way it is, because they're never going to sell for that price.
Everybody's going to get this for free from a carrier or from Samsung when they buy a folding phone.
Yeah, so I think they just want to pump up the value number that they throw in when they tell you that they've given you a freebie.
And the other thing is, I hate to say this, but I know that they don't care, because they sent me the email saying, hey, do you want this info under embargo? I said yes. And then they send it to me, and then I asked for reviewing it, and they're like, we don't have devices. And I was like, oh, it's probably because it's just Miriam Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm not a big player. So then I talked to all my buddies, right, that are writing for like the big pubs where they get everything. They're like, yeah, no devices. And I'm like, you don't care, Samsung. This is just this is the thing I don't like. It's like, you're just cruising along. Stop
it's a sales strategy.
Why can't Samsung give us something exciting anymore? Like, I want excitement. S24 was more exciting, honestly, to me, as an announcement that anything that's leaking, and maybe the 7 Ultra and the Ring. 7 Ultra and the Ring, the watch and the Ring, I'm into. But like, I was hoping the folding phones would be kind of like the thing, and no, just cruising.
Or maybe the XR headset that they announced over a year ago.
Is that coming out? Do you think that's coming out? I don't know.
it should have come out already.
Right.
It's been over
Well,
a year
maybe
now,
they saw
almost
what
a year and a
Apple
half.
did, and Apple honestly hasn't had that much success with that Vision Pro. I think it's a great product. I think it needs to be way cheaper, and I think it needs to lose the external display. I think that's kind of like a vanity project almost at this point.
I agree.
I do think, though, that they will persevere, and I also, because it's Apple, and I also think that it sounds like from Tim Cook's interviews I've been watching that they're getting a lot of enterprise interest, and
Yes.
that makes sense. And that's good for Apple, you know?
By the way, I forgot to mention when we were talking about WWDC, there's one like sleeper feature that they added to Vision OS 2.
They came out with that.
Where you can click on any image, whether it's 2D portrait or not, and it will instantaneously, like within a second, turn into a 3D photo.
Yeah.
And it works so well.
Oh, you've tried this? Okay.
Oh my
Cool.
God. It is, as somebody who does a lot of 3D photography and has tons of 3D content, this is just flawless. It looks like you shot it in 3D. It's incredible. And you can any photo.
Wow. Okay. That's going to be, that's going to be interesting. It's funny. Tim's actually talked about with, I think Marquez, or was in the Dua Lipa. The Dua Lipa did an interview with him. This is really, you got to watch it.
I didn't see that one.
It's amazing. It's 45 minutes. It's really incredible. And he said
she has her like own newsletter or whatever.
Yeah, he said that it was on the BBC. I was like, wow, I didn't know Dua Lipa did interviews on BBC. Anyway, he said like, he lost his parents and he now can see photos of his parents like he's never seen before. And the emotional impact is really quite something. And I believe it. I mean, photography is one of those things. Visuals is something that, like scent, is really strong as a trigger for humans, and audio, of course. The last thing is, and this is, I really want your brain here, because MediaTek, look, I'm a big fan of MediaTek. They're a sponsor of the show, but I love the underdog, right? You know me. So MediaTek's always been close to my heart. And for years now, I've been kind of like, you need to make a PC chip. We need to have a Windows or a Chromebook chip that's not just this little janky tablet stuff that you've been doing. That's like, especially now with Snapdragon X, right? And M, of course. So what are your thoughts on this strong rumor that MediaTek is working with Microsoft on making a Windows on ARM, a chip for Windows on ARM?
Here's the thing. Qualcomm has a exclusivity agreement with Microsoft until the end of the year for ARM chips. Everybody and their mom knows that there is some expectation that there will be other ARM players entering the arena in the January timeframe. And MediaTek has been at the high end of those rumors. And now these rumors are starting to spread publicly. But I would also say NVIDIA is also part of those rumors.
Right.
Because they already build their own CPUs for ARM, and they already have their own GPUs. So they really just need to add maybe an NPU in there, which they also have in their GPUs. So the rumor is that MediaTek and NVIDIA are likely to enter the arena as Qualcomm, Intel, and AMD fight it out. Now, we will have more complexity. And one of the interesting conversations I've had with the OEMs is like, how do you guys handle all of these different silicon vendors? Like,
it's going to be a nightmare for a while. It's going to be the smartphone world all over again. Remember when Tegra existed and TI OMAP? Remember that?
And TI somehow managed to get into a lot of interesting and weird designs, but never survived.
Yeah, no. Cool. Well, listen, I'm actually super stoked about this because the more, look, I have nothing against Intel per se. I have a big problem with their religious adversity to ARM. And I think that's changing. I think that what we saw, at Computex, the way that those chips are designed, Lunar Lake, are looking to me like, I jokingly said in the podcast last week, tell me what you think, that I predict a future not too far from now, 3, 4, 5 years from now, where the Intel chips that we see in our compute devices, like our laptops, are essentially the same as what we're seeing from MediaTek and Qualcomm. Mostly ARM, mostly, SoC type systems with NPUs and GPUs, and and they might develop their own stuff. It's all good. And then I can just see Intel being this much of a stingy about it and putting one x86 core, one little x86 core in there, just to be able to say, hey, we're x86. Because really, to me, it almost feels that way. It's like, why even bother at this point? Like, we know Microsoft is behind Windows on ARM 100% now. They have their full weight on it, which is why we're seeing this incredibly successful launch with Snapdragon X and Copilot Plus. So to me, what it means is that we're going to get Intel chips with ARM, and they're not going to talk about it. They go, we have a new CPU architecture, blah, blah, blah. And then somewhere in the corner of that giant die will be like a tiny little x86 chiplet thing that's running like nothing. That's kind of, I think, where we're going, you know?
I actually think Intel is stubborn enough that they are going to continue to push x86 forward as hard as they can.
But it's only on CPU. What does it matter? That's the least important part of the SoC almost at this point. Like,
don't tell them that. They will have a conniption. Same with AMD. AMD is also doing the same thing where both companies are building smaller CPU cores that are much more optimized for low power, and they seem to be leaning on those to enable them the lower power experience. Because with like Lunar Lake, you have those that low power cluster of 4 low power cores, and those low power cores are so much faster than the last generation of low power cores that they're almost as fast as the high performance cores from last generation. So it's one of those things where they just want you to stay on the low power island and don't use the big cores unless you absolutely have to. And I think that's how they're going to continue to keep trying to push x86 forward. But I think it would be interesting to see your version of history happen. But I think they're so stubborn that there's a possibility they could do something like that too.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I'm just joking mostly, but I said there's a potential future. What I am very excited about, no matter what, is that it clearly seems with Lunar Lake that Intel has a fire under their ass, and they're really pushing hard to kind of compete. And that's Intel at its best. Intel's an engineering company, and if they have a goal, if they're pushed by the competition, they do magical things. And I, for once, am finally excited to see what Intel's up to. It's taken this long. I can't believe it's taken 4 years since M1 for them to finally, like with Lunar Lake, to me, that's the first example. I know last year, but that was kind of meh. Like, this is the first time where I'm like, okay, they're getting it. They're on board. Let's go. Right?
Well, what's funny is I've heard from multiple sources that Lunar Lake moved up because of Snapdragon.
Well, I bet it did. Like, especially once you started seeing the benchmarks of Snapdragon X after the event in Hawaii. Like, we were all like, wow, okay, that's a thing. Listen, we should wrap up. Do you want to tell folks, Anshel, where they can find your stuff online and what you do and all your social media handle, all that good stuff, please?
Yes, so I'm principal analyst at More Insights and Strategy. You can find my stuff at Forbes. You can find my stuff on our website. I'm active on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and I'm also at most of the industry events. So I will be at Augmented World Expo next week in Long Beach. It's going to be the first time they've done it in Long Beach.
Nice.
So I can actually drive there for the first time and go to the Aquarium of the Pacific and look at the fishes.
Fishies.
And yeah, I'm online too much.
I'm looking forward to what happens at AWE. And, please look at all of Anshel's stuff online, social media, definitely the Forbes articles, whatever more insight and strategy stuff is available free for sure. And if you are working for a company, subscribe to their, paid tiers, because analysts are awesome and they know all kinds of crazy, awesome stuff. That's my opinion. I'm so lucky that I have so many analyst friends that I don't have to pay for the stuff, but you should pay for it. And for me, folks, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. Like the comic book character, drop the vowels. That's my handle on Twitter, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, pretty much everywhere. So please find me there. Talk with me and Anshel about this podcast if you have some questions, comments. And the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major podcasting platforms. So please subscribe. And if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. I'd really appreciate it. I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. There's some unboxing videos here from time to time, so check it out. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. And if you really want to help, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/Tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. There you'll find a video version of the podcast. $5 a month gets you access to essentially 4 podcasts roughly every week, right? And you get to see in advance, day in advance or so, the video version where we interact and you see our faces and it's more personal and awesome. Sometimes I also have extra content there because I go overtime or something, bloopers, fun stuff. You get to see the FedEx guy delivering packages in the middle of the podcast, that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's more personal. It's awesome. So consider that if you don't want to pay as much as other tiers. And then if you don't like to use Patreon, consider helping me out through the link in the show notes that'll take you to a PayPal pay button and you buy me a coffee. Buy now. Coffee. I love coffee. Buy me a coffee. So you can help if you can. I'd appreciate it. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And thanks again, Anshel, for being my guest on the show and giving us this awesome analysis on Apple's intelligence. Good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks for having me again. I'm always happy to be on and chat.
Absolutely. We'll have you on the show again at some point in the future. And folks, stay tuned. We'll have another show next week. So until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.